Hello and welcome to the Federal. The first phase of the Jharkhand Assembly elections is just about uh, 10 days to go, 43 seats. The election campaign for Jharkhand has picked up. The Prime Minister was in Jharkhand yesterday. The Home Minister was there a day before that. Today, the Congress President was in Jharkhand campaigning. And of course, the Jharkhand Chief Minister, Mr. Hemant Soren, has been campaigning, leading uh, the campaign for not just the JMM, but also the Congress and other smaller allies of the India bloc. We have with us today Siraj Datta to discuss the Jharkhand elections, the campaign, how it's progressing, what are the two campaigns of the BJP led NDA and the JMM Congress RJD India bloc looking like. Siraj is an activist in Jharkhand. He works among the tribals, among the backward communities, the oppressed communities. He's also an occasional columnist with some portals and uh, publications. And he's also part of citizens groups, civil society groups, which have been engaging with the political stakeholders in Jharkhand, particularly, of course, the Jharkhand government, its allies. And so we'll try and understand from him what the state of Jharkhand looks like electorally at the moment. Welcome, Siraj.
Thank you.
Let me first uh, ask you 5 years of Hemant Soren's government. Uh, 2019, when the Hemant Soren government was sworn in, it was after a very poor performance of the JMM and the Congress in the Lok Sabha elections. And 6 months later, they came in with a sweeping, almost a sweeping victory, because particularly across the tribal dominated seats or the tribal reserved seats, 28 of them in Jharkhand, the BJP could win only two. The JMM and the Congress collectively swept most of the others. And 5 years, it seemed like it was a survival by the day for the government. They had to constantly look over their shoulder on whether there are attempts to topple the government, as we'd seen pan out in other parts of the country where a BJP led or a BJP government was not in place. And then we saw Hemant Soren also go to jail, come out of jail, kind of surprise replacement of the chief minister, Mr. Champai Soren, who was there while, as CM while Hemant was in jail. And and then Champai Soren moving to the BJP. Now he's also a candidate of the BJP along with his son. So in the middle of all of this was one of the things that a lot of people that I've been speaking to in the JMM and the Congress have been saying is that, the last 5 years we were so preoccupied with trying to save our government that in terms of actual governance, things suffered. And off record, they do admit that that has sort of brought in an element of anti incumbency. There are unfulfilled promises. Maybe the government has done certain things, but has it been able to deliver on the big ticket promises it had made? What has been the last 5 years of the Jharkhand government like?
Yeah, hi, Johar to everyone. I think it all started with 2019 when the JMM-led coalition fought on local issues, whereas BJP was all about national issues at that point. So they made several promises based on local issues at that point, and they also got significant support for that. Since then, as you have rightly said, that there was this whole background of constant attack on the government by the BJP. Uh, Largely on basic issues of Jharkhand, like if you see that issues that parties in Jharkhand have been talking about, issues of land, forest, basic domicile identity. I think there they definitely did not do what was expected from them. For example, land bank was one issue that was big in 2019 elections. That Raghuvar Das government had kind of created a land bank out of all about 20 lakh, 22 lakh acre community land. So they also promised, the JMM government had promised at that point that they would repeal it. Similarly, for Land Acquisition Act amendment, that did not happen in these 5 years. So that side is there. But at the same time, it tried some things. For example, it tried to implement this domicile based on 1932 land record Khatian, which is an emotive issue here, and also, yeah, has significant support. They passed it in the Vidhan Sabha, but then, unlike earlier times when it was tried, they then sent it to the central government to be added in the constitutional ninth schedule. So that was tried but was not implemented. So sadly, the last 5 years, the domicile policy that Raghuvar Das had brought in, which saw a lot of backlash and was also kind of anti-Jharkhand, yeah, the last 5 years also passed with that only. On the other hand, I would say that on the question of welfare, if you remember 2019 elections, starvation deaths were a major issue. And in before that, cancellation of ration card, pensions, all that happened. And these are issues that were picked up by JMM and Congress. Last 5 years, I think welfare they have done significantly more than other issues. For example, uh, the biggest, I would say, one of the biggest things that they've done is this make increasing the pension coverage. Like so, earlier in 2019, it was about 6.5 lakhs, the state pension scheme, and now it's about 34 lakh or something like that. So they've increased it significantly. They've lowered the age eligibility for elderly pensions. Similarly, for in ration, if you see, like since the BJP has not done census, Modi government for so many years now, and they've also not increased the quota of PDS, which they should have. So about 44 lakh eligible people of Jharkhand were excluded from the PDS, the National Food Security Act. JMM government kind of brought in its own scheme to include 20 lakh additional these excluded persons, which it did. But it could not give them grains regularly because the BJP did not, Modi government did not give them grains regularly. So that's there. And now this whole Maya scheme is also, I think it's a decent scheme, which is for a poor state of like Jharkhand, it's required. And they have been able to, of course, there were political compulsions, but they were able to kind of implement it in 2 months. I mean, that is significant. So
But
yeah, that's
is it a case of coming in too late, or do you think it has percolated down in terms of a narrative, in terms of the change that it's likely to or expected to bring?
I think this is a factor this time, and it has percolated down. So that's the thing. So this scheme, I would say, has shown that even in Jharkhand, if the government wants to deliver something in a short time, it can. So this whole thing that the government is unable to deliver because of XYZ reasons, I think this scheme has shown that it is possible. And people are talking about it because, yeah, it is significant. So that is there. But a big, I think, something that did not happen is this corruption at the grassroots level, which has always been there, like in schemes. For example, in Narega, it was there earlier also. Now, those things were not really checked in this, even under this government, and that's something that people see. But having said that, I think the larger what has happened in the last 5 years, also something that one has seen across country and in Jharkhand especially. So BJP, since Jharkhand was created, and even before that, BJP was slowly making inroads. But in the last 5 years, I think people have, and it started with Raghuvar Das, people have now a decent idea what BJP stands for and what JMM stands for. I think that big difference is visible. And in this, I would add, for example, Pathalgari movement happened under the Raghuvar Das government.
Yeah.
Now we know the repression that happened. And the first decision Hemant Soren took was to take back all those cases. It took some time, but as per our assessment, I think all the cases have been taken back. I mean, it took a few years for them to do it, and it has happened. So that difference is there. And last, I think a major uh, work done by this government was during COVID. Like when the whole country, especially Modi government, was absolutely not doing anything for the workers, and we know how lockdown happened. I think Hemant Soren government was one of the few governments in the country that kind of stood up for the rights of the workers and did whatever was possible, and that definitely stands out, I would say. Yeah.
But that was a few years ago. So do you think electorally that's something that would still remain relevant by the time, when people go and cast their votes? Is it because, the old adage goes, public memory being very short. And after the pandemic, we've seen a series of elections. We've seen uh, UP going to polls, and UP was a complete, a picture of mess when the pandemic happened. But when the results came, people seem to, and the worst affected areas of UP during the pandemic, seem to have brought back BJP with an even bigger mandate. So in Jharkhand, so something that happened in 2021, 2022, do you think that is, the Hemant Soren government's management at that point in time is going to, be there in public memory when people go and cast their votes?
See, as I said, in these 5 years, people have now a decent idea of Hemant Soren and Hemant Soren government, like what they stand for. So maybe when they go to cast the vote, they would not think of what happened during COVID and how this government stood up. But I think it has helped in creating this idea of the government. So now people know that, okay, this is a government that is increased pensions, that is trying something rations, and also what I mean stood with workers. So that larger narrative, I think, is with Hemant Soren
Of
government.
welfare. So it is a government that stands for welfare in whatever sense
That
one,
narrative is, yeah, it is
yeah.
created, but and also at the same time, if you see BJP's anti-Adivasi stand, I would say from 2019 stands exposed in Jharkhand, and that's that kind of also we could see it in the Lok Sabha elections in Jharkhand. It lost all the 5 seats. In Hemant Soren's case, of course, he did not, for example, do what I said, like did not take back land bank and all. But at the same time, he, for example, took a stand on this Netherhat field firing range, which was a major
Mhm.
issue in Gumla Latehar side.
Yeah.
He did not allow the army to, did not give the government did not give their consent to the army to continue that project. Similarly, this DVC power plant in Bokaro area, which is a Santhal dominated area, he stopped that after protest. So, and one has not seen any, under Raghuvar Das, there were all this whole thing of several MOUs being signed with corporates and land being committed. Now, one has not seen that kind of thing. So I would say that that is also there. So one, of course, expected more from this government on these issues, but it's not that there has not been any difference when one sees one when compares with Raghuvar Das. Yeah.
Okay. So uh, you mentioned tribals. Now, of course, no discussion on Jharkhand can be removed from the basic questions of tribal welfare, of tribal rights, and that's something in 2019, in the 2024 elections, the tribals have very firmly stood behind the JMM. And that is something that the BJP seems to be going all out to sort of fracture, to attack. And the bogey that has been raised is that there is a very steady, swift demographic change happening in Jharkhand. The population of tribals is going down steeply, and illegal Bangladeshi immigrants are pouring in huge numbers, and they're taking over the land of of the tribals. The Santhal Parganas are the worst affected. Uh, the prime minister yesterday, when he addressed his first two rallies for the election in Jharkhand, spoke about Ghuspaitiye, about infiltrators, and the BJP has modeled its entire campaign around saving Maati, Beti, and Roti from these Ghuspaitiye, these infiltrators. And the prime minister in sort of a continuation of the Lok Sabha campaign where he talked about toti le jayenge, bakri le jayenge, bhains le jayenge, talked about how if the JMM is brought back to power, these infiltrators, which are a vote bank of the JMM, will take away your daughters. So, how much of an impact is this going to have? And what also I'd like to know from you is the truth behind or the fiction behind these allegations. How true are they or how untrue are they? Is it a misinformation campaign by the BJP? Because they've been talking about figures from the census. They've said that there has been a 22% decline in the population of tribals. An affidavit that was submitted in September in the High Court, the Jharkhand High Court, talks about all of this, but interestingly, it's an affidavit by the Ministry of Home Affairs and it mentions no linkage to Bangladeshi immigrants. So now for the BJP to make that an issue, how do you see this?
See, I think this is one of the biggest communal agenda that's happening in Jharkhand at this point, based on complete lies. So first, I think the basic question is: are large number of is Jharkhand the place where large number of Bangladeshi infiltrators are coming? We did a thorough fact-finding inquiry. Like when I say we, it's basically the campaigns I'm associated with in Santhal Pargana, and we have done an assessment of the whole census record, the historical record, and what's the situation on ground. The first thing, are Bangladeshi infiltrators coming in Jharkhand in large numbers? That's absolutely rubbish, I would say. First, of course, we know Jharkhand does not share a border. Second, this whole area, like every village we went to, where the BJP and its leaders were raising that, this land issue happened because of Bangladeshi infiltrators, this violence happened because of that. All the incidents were local incidents which involved local Muslims and Adivasis. Now, every village we went to, we talked to Hindus, we talked to Adivasis, we talked to Muslims. Everyone, including BJP Mandal Adhyaksh of that area, who's a resident of Ilami village where this violence took place, and Nishikant Dubey was quick to say that exodus of Hindus is happening. Even he said, we asked a simple question: is there any Bangladeshi infiltrator in your village? All of them said nahi hai, no, koi nahi hai. Then we asked, is there any Bangladeshi infiltrator in this area that you are aware of? Everyone said no, we don't know. Third question is, have you heard? Yes, we have heard. How have you heard? We have seen it in social media. So this is something, this is the ground situation. Now it shares border with Murshidabad, of course, and also that Santhal Pargana shares border with Bengal and Bihar. Over the years, many Muslims and Hindus have come from Bihar and Bengal to this Santhal Pargana area. That's there. And historically, if we see, this area has Shersha Abadia Muslims who have been there since
Yeah.
last, several decades. Even in 1901 census, I think the population was about 8.5 or 9, something around that, of Muslims in that area. So they have a history there. That's one. Second, if we see this whole figure, sensor figures, now that's also something that BJP is misinterpreting and also at times giving wrong figures. For example, Nishikant Dubey in High Court, in the parliament, gave wrong figures. Now there are two figures here. So I would just go to the figures. One is they're saying that the Adivasi population has reduced in Santhal Pargana significantly because of Bangladeshi infiltrators. If we see around in 1951 census, it was about 44% or something like that. And in 2011, it was about 26, 27%. 91 census, it was 28%. The major fall that happened, if you see, was between 51 and 91. Now, why did it happen? There are three reasons. One is, in that period, large number of Hindus and Muslims came from Bengal, Bihar, settled here. That's the first reason. Second, the population growth rate of Adivasis has been significantly less than other communities. Adivasis have been living less, have been dying earlier than other communities. That's why their population has been growing less. So, and this is a problem which is a significant problem, but absolutely no discussion on that. And third is, over the years, large number of Adivasis have been migrating outside Jharkhand, which directly affects their population growth rate. Sadly, these issues are not being discussed at all. So this whole thing that after Jharkhand's creation, 10% fall, 15% fall, that's absolutely wrong. Fall was there significantly between 51 and 91. Third thing, I would also like to point out this, that they've also been saying that Hindus were 90% in 51, and now they are some 60%, sub
Yeah.
30%, 40% come ho gaye. That's also absolutely wrong, because in 1951 census, all the Adivasis, except a few Christians were there, were counted as Hindus, because 1951 census did not have a column for Adivasis. So you had separate column for scheduled tribes, and then you had religious columns in which there were 6 religions. And that's why at that point, all Adivasis were counted as Hindus. We have done our assessment and analysis, and as per that analysis, between 51 and 2011, the number of Adivasis has increased by about the absolute number by about 8.5 lakhs. The number of Muslims has increased about 13.5 lakhs. And the number of Hindus, non Adivasi Hindus, has increased by about 24 lakhs. In percentage terms, of course, it will be different because the base is different. So this whole Bangladeshi infiltrator thing is a big bogey, and it has no, and that's also a reason why, if you see, they have been targeting Muslims. Now, initially, they were just talking about infiltrators. They realized that it's not really translating into, something on ground. So lately, they have started directly talking about Muslims. If you see, earlier they were not
Right.
bringing the Muslim word. Now they have started talking about Muslims because they just want to target and create that divide. Third issue, which is associated with this, two issues more, that land and this whole taking away daughters. First is land. Now, as per Santhal Pargana Tenancy Act, Adivasi land is completely non-transferable. Even an Adivasi cannot buy Adivasi land. But there's a system in which, through a gift deed and informal arrangement, Adivasis have been selling land to Muslims and to Hindus. As it's non-transferable, the price of the land is significantly less than, say, neighboring Murshidabad, neighboring Bihar, or even in that same area, the transferable land, the price is significantly different. That's why you have people coming from neighboring districts and blocks buying land because they are getting it for cheap through this whole arrangement, which has been there for years with the, every like administration political system. It was part of this. It's a well accepted system, and that's something that needs to be definitely checked, and that's a big issue. Last, this whole taking away women thing. I mean, first, this whole idea is, it shows BJP's Manuwadi thought process. But in terms of, they came out with a list of 10 mukhyas, if you remember, and public
Yeah.
representatives. Nishikant Dubey, Asha Lakra, and Asha Lakra in her press conference even said that Rohingya log aa rahe hain, sab Rohingya hai.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, Scroll went and did a ground report. We also did that. In that, even in that 10, there are women who have married Muslims, but Muslims who are Khatiyani Muslims and have been there.
Mhm.
And that's a different question of Adivasi marrying Muslim, Adivasi marrying Hindu. There are also several who have married Hindus. And I think that's a different debate. But this whole thing that people are marrying, coming, infiltrators are coming and marrying, I think that's also complete rubbish, I would say. Yeah.
So I'll add to what to extend what you've talked about briefly. When you said that in the 1951 census of all tribals being counted as Hindus. Now, there are a couple of interesting things that have happened over the last 2, 3 days in Jharkhand. When the BJP announced its manifesto, the Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah, who launched the manifesto, talked about the Uniform Civil Code and said that the tribals will be exempted, but we will implement a UCC. A day or two earlier, the Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram, which is an affiliate of the RSS and works among the tribals, also held a press conference in Jharkhand. And it talked about uh, a kind of a counter to this whole infiltration and Muslims and Ghuspetia and all of this, which has come from the JMM, where they are saying that if you're so concerned about the tribals, why are you sitting on the demand for a Sarna code? And the Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram did a press conference and said all tribals are originally Hindus, and a Sarna code will be very divisive, and it will divide the Hindus among tribals, non-tribal Hindus. Now, when Mr. Amit Shah addressed the issue of the Sarna Code, he said we will take it into consideration. He didn't, of course, give a clear answer on whether they are open to it. Since there are rumors now that the census will be done next year, uh, whether the center is going to have a column for religion as identifying Sarna Code. All of that is happening now. There are people, commentators who've said, it's now a kind of the JMM's Sarna code politics versus the infiltration and this kind of tribals bachao politics of the BJP. How do you see this? And this whole issue of even today, I believe Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge in his campaign talked about uh, issues that were raised by the JMM government in 2022, sent to the governor for approval, and the governor has just been sitting over it. The Sarna Code demand has been, and it's not something that's peculiar to Jharkhand. We've seen this demand coming from other states with major tribal populations, and the BJP hasn't done anything on that. And Hemant Soren has been talking about how this shows the duplicity in the BJP's narrative. But is that something that on the ground is finding traction? Is the JMM, the Congress, able to communicate that to to a lay person who may not know how governments function, how files move? So what is your sense on that?
See, I think the bottom line is that Adivasis are not Hindus. That's the bottom line. And I think this is something where there's a difference between JMM and BJP. For the BJP and RSS, this whole idea that Adivasis are not Hindus is something they cannot accept. And they also see Adivasis as backward Hindus. And this is a whole fight. So this whole Sarna code, I think, is something which formalizes this thing that Adivasis are not Hindus. That's why RSS has always been against it, and it shows. I mean, BJP's Sankalpa Patra, as you said, does not mention this. Now, my opinion is also this, that see, one of the reasons why BJP and also RSS have been constantly attacking this JMM government because of two reasons. One is, of course, Jharkhand is full of natural resources, which they need for their corporates. Second is, I think Jharkhand has actually challenged the Hindutva narrative of BJP and RSS, which was not the case earlier. It's a political challenge that they have received. Like when Hemant Soren makes a statement like Adivasis were never Hindus and will never be Hindus. Now, this is a political statement which clearly asserts the Adivasi identity, and this is something for them. It's completely out of their this thing. They cannot even accept this. So, and this realization has also been growing in the state. So, I think amongst Adivasis, this is definitely a very big issue, and there's no doubt that this government, the Vidhan Sabha, passed this Sarna Code thing, and then it was governor did not do anything, central government did not do anything, and people can see it. Like they can definitely see it, and it's a big issue, and it will be a political issue this time. And this is also a larger question of, in my opinion, of challenging this whole anti-Adivasi Hindutva politics. Yeah.
Okay. We've got very little time left, but I'd like to also take your, understand from you. There's a sort of, something that mainstream media hasn't really spent much time on or explain. But during the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, we saw a new outfit come up in Jharkhand. Uh, the name has sort of been tweaked from JKBSS to JKLM, if I'm not wrong, and led by this man called Jairam Kumar Mahato. They did not win any seats in the elections of the Lok Sabha for the Lok Sabha in 2024 June, but they did poll, at least in three constituencies, a very substantial number of votes. Jairam Kumar Mahato himself polled upwards of 3 lakh votes in Giridih, and two of his other candidates polled upwards of a lakh votes. So now they're also fielding candidates for the assembly. They're not aligned to any of the two, the ruling coalition or the BJP-led NDA, and they're not essentially a tribal party either. So uh, what is the kind of impact that he might have? Could he emerge as, journalists love to question, as kingmaker in this election? Would he be a factor uh, in, areas where there are Mahato votes? And if at all he does manage to wean away a substantial chunk of votes, who does this damage more?
See, I think you're right. I mean, jail cam is and Jairam Mehto is a factor. And I think if you see, Mehtos have always looked for leaders in Jharkhand. And there was a time when JMM was the party. Over time, I think Mehto shifted out because some individual leaders are not there anymore. Now, he came up as someone who was representing Mehto interests and also some of the issues that Jharkhandi youth are facing, and I think he was raising valid issues. So during Lok Sabha, as you rightly said, I mean, JB cases made an impact, and at that point they kind of ate into BJP votes, largely BJP votes. So the Mehtos who kind of vote for the BJP in Lok Sabha, this is the broader trend. There might be differences. A large part of it votes for JMM Congress in Vidhan Sabha. So this Vidhan Sabha, there are three factors I would say associated with jail camp. One, of course, in Mehto, in seats which has significant Mehto population, it will be a factor. Second, however, I would say that the rise that was happening is kind of, I would say, he has kind of seen a slump because of various factors. So the way I think one thought that after Lok Sabha, the impact that JLK might have, I think, yeah, it might have reduced a bit because this time they have decided to contest, I think, almost all seats or most of the seats, which they don't have the capacity to. So that's a factor which might affect them and also candidates. But they'll definitely maybe manage to convert a couple of seats, if not more, and they'll eat into votes in a few seats. And that is the question because they'll eat into both sides. Now, then it depends at the local seat. What's the dynamics to kind of so at this point, I don't think it's really possible to even guess whether they would eat into this side or that side. I think we have to, yeah, see.
Okay, so concluding remarks, we have the manifesto of the BJP. We know what their campaign looks like by and large. Uh, as far as the India bloc is concerned, we don't have the manifesto. We've not really seen a very electrifying campaign, so to speak, so far, except, of course, Hemant Soren and his wife, Kalpana Soren, who seem to be carrying the entire alliance on their shoulders. The Congress, although a smaller partner in the alliance, seems to, its top guns seem to be missing. Rahul Gandhi is missing from the campaign. Priyanka's contesting her own, first election from Wayanad. Mr. Kharge addressed, of course, two rallies and a press conference today in Jharkhand. Uh, so, between these two fronts, how do you see their campaigns progressing? And what kind of a narrative do you think at the moment, right now? We wouldn't want to predict what happens in the election results, but at the moment, who seems to be having an upper hand in terms of the narrative, in terms of the campaign?
See, I think I would say the larger, broader narrative is definitely in support of Hemant Soren. I mean, and BJP is trying very hard with its Bangladeshi infiltrator thing. But the way Hemant Soren and also Kalpana Soren, as you're saying, I mean, and for example, today he brought out a few things that he would do on Jal Jangal Zameen. Couple of days ago, he talked about welfare, what they'll do. So I think the broader narrative across state is in favor of Hemant Soren, but on ground, this there's significant local anti incumbents in few seats, so that we don't know how they will, what will happen with them. BJP, I think, is trying, and maybe, yeah, in gaining, it has gained a bit, but definitely not as much as one sees their narrative in the media. I don't think, yeah, that's the case yet. So yeah, and you're right that I mean, one of the things is that this India Alliance has not brought out a manifesto yet, which they should. Now it's only a week that they have. Let's see. Yeah, on that, and Jharkhand and BJP's manifesto. I mean, one can clearly see like the things that are missing there, which,
Mhm.
and this whole Jharkhandi Adivasi thing. It's really not there, which is visible. Yeah.